Ladies and gents, home studio reaction. This is Miscellaneous Myths, Ursa Major by channel overly Sarcastic Productions. Tragic tale of the nymph Callisto finally told the way it was always intended to be experienced, with a non-zero number of references to Minecraft. So there are going to be references to Minecraft. Alright, Ursa Major, is that, I think that's a constellation, right? Yeah, something like that. So it's going to be fun, right? I mean, I've seen some overly Sarcastic Production Miscellaneous Myths videos about this. Like, I don't know if there are many of them or not, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I've watched one or two about constellation, what the story is. There's always some fun one, right? We humans basically created all these myths around stars, because that is like the, one of the first things that awed us as humans. As soon as we start to think about anything besides survival. Ooh, what is that? Look at those stars. There must be something. Oh, look at that, they're changing. They're changing over time. So there's many great stories people created because of that. So let's go this one. Hello, overly Sarcastic Production, especially Miscellaneous Myths, because I don't know much about Western myths or anything, outside of my country myths. So it's always fun to see some Chinese myth in there, some Japanese myths, especially Greek myth, right, with Zeus. That's always fun. I don't know which area's myth is this, but it's going to be fun. Let's watch it.
If you live in the northern hemisphere, one of the first constellations you probably learned about was Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Or more specifically, you probably learned about the asterism the Big Dipper, which is about 50% of the Great Bear. It's big, recognizable, and actually visible a lot more than most constellations, for one simple...
Yeah, the Big Dipper, the kite one, right? I'm pretty sure there's a line that you can create which will tell you the North Star. That's the one, right? Pretty sure when I was a kid, we used to do that a lot. Check out the, kite shape, and then you trace it or something like that.
Reason. This constellation is circumpolar, which means it's close enough to the North Star Polaris that if you're at a high enough latitude, it never actually sets below the horizon. It just spins under the pole star. So rather than only being visible at certain times of year when the sun is in opposition to it, it's technically visible basically year-round. And you have to go pretty far south before the constellation ever completely sets. At most latitudes, you'll still be able to see the top part of the Great Bear, and from the perspective of Greece, only the Great Bear's paws are ever obscured below the horizon. The main body is always visible. And fun fact, the original purpose of the word Arctic was to define the area of the planet where an observer would never see any part of the Great Bear set. Arctic is derived from the Greek Arctikos, literally meaning of the bears. It's a very convenient coincidence that the Arctic is also the only natural habitat of polar bears, which aren't found in the Antarctic.
So wait a minute, so when you say Arctic bear, that means of the bear? That's so good, man.
It's funny how these things work out. Now, Ursa Major has a lot of myths attached to it, and like all constellation myths, they're not particularly consistent. The only through line of a typical constellation myth is that eventually the constellation gets made, because that's really the only part of the story that demonstrably has to happen. But in the case of Ursa Major, there's one other consistent thread in the Greek myths of its creation, that it isn't a particularly happy affair for anyone involved. So today let's tell a few versions of the tale of the nymph Callisto, and how she got screwed over in every possible way. Now this story is retold in Ovid's Metamorphoses, Hyginus's Astronomica, and a few other places, and you know it's gonna be bad when Ovid's version isn't notably meaner than the rest. Our story begins with Callisto, daughter of King Lycaon of the Halloween werewolf.
Daughter of King Lycaon, princess of Arcadia, huntress and devotee of the goddess Artemis. Oh my god, this is Greek myth? Oh no, is Zeus gonna appear here? I just said at the start of the video, I always love Greek myth and with Zeus. What are the chances Zeus gonna appear here? I think chances are high.
Video, and follower of Artemis. Like all of Artemis's devotees, Callisto likes nothing more than sprinting through the woods wild and free and hunting her little heart out on all the beasts of the wood. But unfortunately for Callisto, she's a human being in ancient Greece, and thus catches the attention of Zeus, who's tired of Hera spotting all his earthly escapades and wants to stress test the idea that maybe a thin covering of trees will prevent the goddess queen of marriage and familial responsibility from noticing him cheating on her for the 4th time that month. So
what the? If it's stupid and it works, it isn't stupid.
The goddess queen of marriage and familial responsibility from noticing him cheating on her for the 4th time that month. So Zeus zips down to Earth while Callisto is relaxing in a wild and ancient grove, and to further avoid suspicion, Zeus takes the form of Artemis. In this form, he seduces Callisto, which, depending on the version, she may or may not have been super into. Regardless of the specifics, the outcome is...
What kind of an... He takes form of his daughter, Artemis, to seduce this person. As Artemis. This just, I don't know, man.
It's the same. Callisto becomes pregnant, and when this is discovered, Artemis is pretty peeved that one of her followers did
It is not a hard concept. It is literally the simplest of
and maintain the maidenhood that Artemis is so big on, and kicks her out of the group. This is where the story starts getting very wibbly depending on who's telling it. In Ovid's version, Callisto is exiled from Artemis's followers and gives birth to a son named Arcas. Hera seizes the opportunity to curse Callisto for, the usual reasons, and transforms her into an enormous bear. Callisto, trapped in this form, wanders the mountains, torn between worlds and utterly alone.
By the way, that's a middle finger, not the first one.
Able to even petition Zeus for help on account of being a bear. Meanwhile, her son Arcas spends the next 15 years doing normal baby stuff, like pretty quickly not being a baby anymore, and one day, while out hunting, he encounters a bear. A strange bear that looks at him with a very piercing expression and doesn't seem at all inclined to attack him. Even so, a bear is a bear, and
I think the expression was, fuck me, I know where this is going.
Arcas moves to attack it instead. This kicks off Zeus's fratricidal spidey sense, and he finally clocks the situation. And to prevent the tragedy of Arcas accidentally killing his own mother, Zeus thinks fast and raises them into the sky, transforming mother and son into—
Zeus care? Since when? Since when Zeus's spidey senses tingle whenever his victim is about to die by, her own son or whatever? Since when Zeus care?
The constellations Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the nearby Little Bear constellation whose tail contains the North Star Polaris. Spared from inflicting the ultimate tragedy on each other, the two bears spin through the night sky together for all eternity, most likely united in the feeling that there had to be a better solution than this, Zeus. But other versions of the story don't quite play out the same way. Hyginus's Astronomica, for instance—
Yeah, there was a seducer literally go down there talking to the kid and saying that's your mother and fucking off. That would have been literally better.
enumerates several ways Callisto has been mythically transformed into a bear, in some versions by Artemis herself, in other versions Zeus turned Callisto into a bear to hide her from Hera, and in some stories Artemis is subsequently the one who unknowingly killed Callisto. In another version, Bear Callisto and her son are captured by Arcadians and brought to King Lycaon to sacrifice to Zeus for trespassing in his temple. Zeus, catching wind of this, zaps them into the stars as constellations. In this one, intriguingly, Arcas is transformed into a different constellation. Instead of Ursa Minor, he becomes the constellation Bootes, which most notably contains the red star Arcturus, whose name means guardian of the bear, and is very easily found and identified by following the arc of the tail of Ursa Major to the nearest bright star. In Ovid's Fasti, it's also explained why the Great Bear never sinks below the horizon. Hera negotiated with Tethys, one of the ocean titans, to keep them away from her waters to make their starry fate just a little shittier for him. Thanks, Hera.
By the way, imagine that, right? We encounter aliens. Somehow we get to a point where alien asks us, why did you name the star Arcturus, to any astrophysicist or anyone, right, at NASA? And they're like, oh, it's quite a story, a myth actually. What's a myth? Yeah, you're gonna understand.
Arcas also has a little more going on in some stories. Pausanias' descriptions of Greece lists several of his accomplishments after Callisto was turned into a bear, most notably becoming the king of Arcadia, which wasn't even called Arcadia until Arcas introduced the locals to agriculture, weaving, and the glorious technology of bread. The land and its people were renamed in Arcas' honor, and on top of all that, he supposedly married a dryad named Erato and had several children who later began several lines of Arcadian kings. Pausanias, a practical guy, can accept a legendary king being birthed by a bear and marrying a wood nymph, but draws the line at people turning into stars, and in his telling, Arcas never becomes a constellation, and even Callisto's starry fate is questioned. No matter the specifics of the story, and even no matter which constellations they get ascribed to, a few unsurprising details remain consistent. The unfortunate nymph Callisto is transformed into a bear, and then to sort of make up for it, is divinely transformed into the constellation the Great Bear. Her son Arcas goes on to do other things, but after his death or ascension remains nearby, either as the bear-like Ursa Minor or the more humanoid Bootes constellation, accompanying and watching over his mother as she—
Look, man, I think the first story to me seems about right, but then again, Zeus caring and actually making them stars, I don't know, say constellation, I don't know about that. Artemis actually turning her into bear, I guess she wouldn't care that much. Only one makes sense, obviously, is Hera, because that is consistent with her shenanigans. I can't do nothing to Zeus, so I must victim blame. That's her thing.
Slowly turns around the pole star. While it makes sense that the only part of the story that's 100% consistent is the part where the immutable stars take the arrangement they have in real life, it's still a bit of a bummer that we don't have more reliable through line. It's the same thing that everyone always agrees on. It's
mood since the story was first told. I mean, yeah. Back then or some time. Jokes on Hera. Looks like Callisto got her feet wet after all. When there's some singular, okay. So overall this story was fun, and obviously it went to the Zeus, which I did not see it coming because I saw the name Ursa Major. I mean, how would I supposed to know this is going to turn out to be Greek Zeus myth? But okay, yeah. Alright, well, that was Miscellaneous Miss Ursa Major by channel Sarcastic Production. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.